Dear presidents, colleagues, and friends, welcome. I am Ayşe Önen, President of SKAL International Istanbul. On behalf of my board, I would like to thank you all for joining us today. Bienvenidos. Les agradecemos a todos por acompañarnos hoy. Bienvenue. Nous vous remercions d'être avec nous aujourd'hui. We would like first to congratulate the SKAL International Board, especially to our Senior Vice President, dear Burçin Türkkan, for the initiative to celebrate 28 April World SKAL Day throughout the month and to give the opportunity to the clubs around the world to join this celebration. This gave us a great opportunity to organize a very important presentation promoting a World Heritage in Turkey, Göbekli Tepe, which changed the world history. We have chosen a very special day for this presentation. Today, 23rd of April. We are celebrating the 101st anniversary of the foundation of the Turkish Grand National Assembly, as well as the National Sovereignty and Children's Day. During our War of Independence, under the commandment of our great leader Atatürk, the Turkish Grand National Assembly gathered in Ankara on April 23rd, 1920, for the first time and laid down the foundations of the new, independent, secular, and contemporary Republic of Turkey, born from the ashes of the Ottoman Empire. In 1929, the founder of Turkish Republic, Atatürk, dedicated this meaningful day to children, announcing 23rd of April as National Sovereignty and Children's Day, in recognition of children as the future of the nation. In 1979, UNICEF proclaimed this important national day as an international event. Since then, children around the world come together in Turkey to enjoy Children's Day celebrations and festivities with hope that these memories of friendly atmosphere will contribute to a future of enhanced brotherhood and peace among nations. Now, I kindly ask just 2 minutes from you to share our video about Children's Day before the presentation. Thank you. Thank you. After emphasizing the importance of this special day for us, let me introduce to you now our speaker, a multicultural guide, historian, Mr. Şerif Yenen, a person with many talents, tourism expert, travel writer, film producer, speaker, a member of our club, and also a very good friend of us. He will make a very exciting presentation about Göbekli Tepe and archaeological wonder, the birthplace of human civilizations, which has been added into the UNESCO World Heritage List in 2018. Now, I pass the word to our board member, Mr. Mustafa, who is the moderator today. Thank you, and welcome again.
Thank you so much, my president, Ayşe. And I would also like to extend our warmest greetings to you, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening for our attendees from 5 different continents. We are nearly 85 people now. We are exactly 85 people, and we have attendees from Asia, Europe, Africa, USA, and Latin America, as far as I counted. Thank you so much. And this means a lot to us. My name is written as SKAL International Istanbul, but actually it is not. I am Mustafa, and this shows my devotion to our club and SKAL International World. Before I pass the microphone to Sherif, let me quickly give you some housekeeping notes. As you can see on the red dot on the left corner, we are recording this session. And if you want to turn off your cameras, it's okay. But needless to mention, we love seeing your faces in these little boxes. This motivates us tremendously. The duration of this meeting is actually scheduled as 1 hour. And for this presentation, trust me, it is not enough. But of course, we always obey the rules of SKAL International, especially when we have so many directors and the presidents. But maybe we will have some flexibility and extend it at the end for the Q&A session. We try our best to be in the limits that is given to us. If you have any questions, you can write it to the chat, or you can unmute yourself and you can address your questions directly to our speaker at the end of his presentation. I know that there are lots of interesting points and many places that you would like to have more information. Let me quickly share with you the biography of Sherif, and then we will pass the microphone to him. We will talk about Sherif Yenen, and he already prepared us his presentation for Göbekli Tepe. He was born in 1963 and known as Turkish travel specialist, a travel writer, a tourist guide, and filmmaker. He gave lectures about cultural heritage of Turkey, travel writing, blogging, Anatolian civilizations, and tourist guiding in the very prestigious universities such as Bilgi University and Boğaziçi University. He wrote Turkish Odyssey, and this is like a Bible to me. And I have 2 copies, one at home, one in the office, for maybe 20 years. And I wrote lots of text from that book. And it is also the first guidebook written by a Turk in Turkey. He is the producer, director, and the writer of Istanbul Unveiled. And this is a incredibly well organized, a beautiful film, and it was award-winning travel documentary with 8 international awards. I watched that a couple of times, and I really suggest you, if you have time, to watch that little short movie. He gives lectures in the USA and Turkey about travel in Turkey, Turkish history and culture, and majority of his lectures are in academic communities. His guidebooks are used as textbooks or are on suggested reading lists at various universities, and his articles and columns are published in international magazines and national newspapers. He continues his signature tours with focus on culture, history, and culinary. He is also a member of Chaîne de Rotisseurs. As you can see, the extracurricular, he is the president of Istanbul Tourist Guides, the president of Federation of Turkish Tourist Guide Association. He is the president of Tourist Guides Foundation for nearly 2 decades. And between 2003 to 7, he was in the executive board member of World Federation of Tourist Guide Association. And between 2006 to 13, he was the vice president of Turkish Travel Agencies and Tourist Guides Assembly, which was established by the Union of Chamber and Commodity Exchange in Turkey. And we are also very proud to have him as a SKAL member of our club. Sheriff, my favorite part is over, and the ball is on your field now.
Thank you very much. Greetings to everyone. It is such a great honor for me to be here in the presence of all esteemed members of SKAL. I am maybe the newest member of SKAL Istanbul, and I'm honored to be part of SKAL. Well, let me just share my screen. Of course, our topic today is going to be Göbekli Tepe, but I'm not going to speak only about Göbekli Tepe. I'm going to try to draw a larger picture first, and then place Göbekli Tepe in the right location in this large picture. But before I do that, let me just remind you that I am a very active social media user. Whenever you have anything to share, whenever you have anything to ask, we can always keep contact through Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, or whatsoever. Turkey is located in Anatolia. It is such an important location. Think about the world map. It is located at the meeting point of 3 continents. It's a big deal. You see, this is Anatolia in here, and it is right in the middle point of the 3 continents, Europe here, and Asia here, and Africa here. So as a result of that, of course, throughout ages, throughout thousands of years, Anatolia, the lands of Turkey, has always drawn the attention of many great civilizations. We can count approximately between 20 to 30 different civilizations that have chosen Anatolia as their homeland. Some of them were indigenous people, and some came from outside, and they chose Anatolia as their homeland, and they continued their lives in here. And as a result, they left such a rich cultural heritage behind. And as the new residents of these lands today, we are enjoying this cultural richness. And let me share some of them with you today. Before I start my presentation, I would like to give you a short orientation about the geography a little bit so that we understand it better. See, this is our country. This is the map of Turkey. It is rectangular in shape, and surrounded by seas in 3 sides. We have the...
Sheriff, I'm sorry, there is one person who unmuted himself. Let me mute everyone, and then you will unmute yourself, okay?
Okay.
Okay, you can unmute yourself.
Okay. So we were just talking about the location of our country, Turkey, surrounded by seas in 3 sides. With this feature, it's a peninsula. We have the Black Sea in the north, and the Aegean Sea in the west, and the Mediterranean in the south. Very interestingly, we have an inner sea in here, which is named as the Sea of Marmara. And the Sea of Marmara looks like a lake, but it is not, because it has connections with the other bodies of water around. For example, the Bosphorus Strait connects the Sea of Marmara to the Black Sea, and the city of Istanbul is located on the 2 sides of the Bosphorus in here. And on the other hand, the same Marmara Sea is connected to the Aegean Sea with another strait here, that is the Dardanelles. And Turkey is also located in the meeting point of Europe and Asia. So the border between Europe and Asia is just here. The 2 straits, the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, together with the Sea of Marmara, form the border between Europe and Asia, which means above here is Europe, which is like 3% of Turkey, and below this line is 97%, and that's Asia. And this Asian part of Turkey, throughout history, has been named as Anatolia, which is an ancient Greek word, and it means the land of sunrise. Considering the Greeks in the Aegean, this was the land of sunrise in the east. The sun rose from here. That's why they named this land as the land of sunrise, Anatolia. And comparatively, Turkey is a large country. From one end to the other end, it's approximately 1,600 kilometers. This will be equal to approximately 1,000 miles. By flight, like 2.5 hour flight from one end to the other end. So it gives you a sense of the size. Other than that, we have many neighbors around Turkey. We have two neighbors. One is Greece and the other is Bulgaria. And then we have Georgia here, we have Armenia here, we have Iran here, Iraq, and Syria. And lots of neighbors, of course. A little bit of geography. Mount Ararat is the highest peak in Turkey. It's located near the border area, Iran and Armenia. And we have the two biblical rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris, originating from the high mountains of eastern Anatolia, and they flow down to Syria and Iraq. And then we have the Cappadocia region in the center, and next to Cappadocia is the second largest lake, and here is the largest lake in Turkey that is named as Lake Van. I think for geography, that's enough for now. Like 20 years ago, something very important happened in Turkey. In the Aegean region, in the inner part of the Aegean region, there is a city called Denizli near Pamukkale. And just by coincidence, they found some fossil pieces. And those fossil pieces later on were identified to be parts of the skull from a Homo erectus, which was estimated to be 1.1 million years old. For the first time in history, we found pieces of Homo erectus. You know, Homo erectus started standing on 2 feet in Africa about 2.5 million years ago. And from there, they migrated to different parts of the world. And for the first time, it was noted and it was documented that Homo erectus on the way to Europe had to pass through Anatolia, and we found traces of that. And this was such an important and such a big discovery. And this was approximately 20 years ago. Then I have to speak about the ages a little bit. You know, archaeologists look at the ages and they named them according to the main material used at the time. For example, early times were named as the Stone Age. You know, Paleolithic age means Old Stone Age. Paleo is old, lithos is stone, Old Stone Age. For the case of Anatolia, for the case of Turkey, the Paleolithic age starts in about 1.1 million and continues until about 16,000 BC. This Stone Age is the time in which the settled life didn't start. It was the hunter-gatherers. They lived mostly in caves, and they were able to survive with the food that they collected from nature, like plants or roots of plants and fruits or whatsoever. And then they hunted wild animals, and this is the way that they were able to survive. And whenever the food was gone, finished, scarce, they had to go to other places to look for more food. That's why they were nomadic. And there was no settled life and there was no agriculture. So the Paleolithic age, it's in itself, is divided into 3 periods: the lower, the middle, and the upper Paleolithic period. From about 1.1 million until about 125,000 was the lower Paleolithic. It was more primitive. They had fire, they buried their people, and they used stone tools to hunt animals. And this was the time in which we saw or we had Homo erectus. Then in about 125,000, a new phase of the Paleolithic age started, and this was the middle Paleolithic, and it continued until about 40,000. And this was the phase in which the Neanderthals were seen. So the Neanderthals had no connection with the Homo erectus. The Neanderthals came from Europe. And they settled down here, and we have traces of these people still found in Turkey today. And at the end of this phase, in about 40,000, suddenly the Neanderthals disappeared and a new kind started appearing, and this was the Homo sapiens, the closest ancestors of humankind, or the humankind itself, actually. So the Homo sapiens appeared in about 40,000 and continued until about 16,000. Things got more sophisticated. The tools that they used became more elegant, finer, and they were able to make tools, for example. They were getting civilized. And this continued until about 16,000. So when the Paleolithic age ended in Anatolia in 16,000 BC, all over the world was covered with snow and ice. This was the Ice Age, actually, from 16,000. And in the area of southeastern part of Turkey, you see, this is Turkey today. This is the eastern part of Turkey. And the Euphrates River comes from here, and the Tigris River comes from here. And the land in between these two rivers has been named as Mesopotamia. And the upper Mesopotamia is Turkey today, and this is the southeastern part of Turkey. So with the warming, global warming in this Mesolithic period, the Paleolithic period ended in 16,000 and a new period started, Mesolithic, the Middle Stone Age, and it continued until about 11,000 or 10,000 BC. So this was a transition period from the Paleolithic to the Neolithic age, because in 10,000 BC, Neolithic age started. So in this Mesolithic period, because of the global warming, glaciers started melting down, and we had a very pleasant, very mild climate in the area of Mesopotamia. And as a result of that, of course, lots of hunter-gatherers from all around started coming over to this area, this geography, because it was a lot more easier to survive and to continue life in here. And they started having widely grown wheat, barley, lentils, and so on. They were all wild, not cultivated. So these hunter-gatherers were easily able to pick these crops and eat them. And this area was becoming very popular. After about a few thousand years, they were eventually able to obtain seeds from these wild crops, wheat, barley, and lentils. And these people, I don't know how, or we don't know how they were able to obtain the seeds, maybe by coincidence, were able to replant them, and they started agriculture. So as a result, there was a big change in lifestyle. What is this change? The change was that they didn't need to run after the food anymore, because they were able to bring the food to themselves. So together with agriculture, settled life started. So that's why archaeologists, some of them, regard this as a big revolution. So they start a new age in here, and this is the Neolithic age, meaning the new Stone Age. Some archaeologists would name it as the Neolithic Revolution because it was as important as a revolution, or it was a revolution itself. And everything happened in here.
Ben sana aç demedim ki.
As you see,
Tamam peki. Tamam.
Mustafa.
Evet, evet Şerif. Ben yine bir unmute yapayım bir saniye. Evet.
Okay, sorry for the interruption. The two rivers originating from Anatolia and flowing down to Syria and Iraq, the Euphrates and the Tigris, after a certain point, they merge together and flow into the Persian Sea. And the land in between these two rivers throughout ages has been named as Mesopotamia, and the upper Mesopotamia is southeastern part of Turkey today. And settled life and agriculture started here. So Neolithic age started in here. So the Neolithic age in this case starts in about 10,000 BC and continues until about 5,500. In the first 2,000 years of the Neolithic age, the Neolithic people were not able to make pottery. We understand that they didn't have soup kind of food because they didn't have the right pots to cook, but they had stone containers, or they must have eaten a lot of barbecues. This is what the archaeologists say. And in about 2,000, 3,000 years, after settling down in here, you see all these dots are the Neolithic settlements. They started migrating around, and in about 8,000 BC, we start seeing Neolithic settlements in central Anatolia. 3,000, 4,000 years later, we start seeing Neolithic settlements around the Sea of Marmara. So things started here and spread all around from here. This is the situation, and in the southeastern part of Turkey, there is a major city called Şanlıurfa. And Şanlıurfa is a large city with a population of approximately 1 million people there, very close to the Syrian border. But it is so easy to get to Şanlıurfa, for example, with approximately 1.5-hour flight from Istanbul or from a few other cities. You can easily get to Şanlıurfa. There are frequent flights. And somewhere near Şanlıurfa, there is a very arid land. This is where Göbekli Tepe is located today. And then there is a small hill with an altitude of 770 meters from the sea level. And this is the highest point in the whole area. So this is almost like a desert. You don't see anything green around here, as you see. So this is where Göbekli Tepe was actually discovered. There is a German archaeologist, Klaus Schmidt, and he was in Turkey for the excavation of another Neolithic site, which stayed under the waters of the Atatürk Dam today. But with the experience that he gathered from there, he was looking for a new place to excavate. And after he was introduced to some pieces from Göbekli Tepe, he was very excited, and he went to the place and he understood the importance of the place by looking at the evidence around. And in 1995, he started the excavations in Göbekli Tepe there. So I'm going to use this mulberry tree. This is the mulberry tree on top of the hill. This is the highest hill as a landmark there, so that we know where we are looking at. For example, the mulberry tree is here in this picture. And Klaus Schmidt started excavating the hillside just down the hill from the mulberry tree. But from 1995 up until today, they made lots of experimental digs here and there. And it was understood that the whole area of Göbekli Tepe would be very large, covering like 300 meters by 300 meters. And this area would take approximately 12 football or soccer fields inside. So imagine the size of this place. And when excavations started there, things were so exciting, and we always were reading about Göbekli Tepe in the news. And as a tour guide, I was going to the area frequently for many tours. And each time I went to the Şanlıurfa area, of course, I would go to Göbekli Tepe together with my guests and speak to Mr. Klaus Schmidt and get information from him, go inside the site and feel the place. Things got very sophisticated today. We cannot get inside there anymore, and the whole area has changed a lot. Let me just show you the change. But see, this is the mulberry tree on top of the hill there, and this is the hillside at the bottom of the hill there. This is the present day Göbekli Tepe. There is a very sophisticated looking awning on top of it for the preservation of the excavated megaliths there. What was found? What has been found in Göbekli Tepe? Let's take a look at it. What was so important there? Why the whole world focused on Göbekli Tepe? What was so different? What was the big deal there? First of all, when Klaus Schmidt started the excavations, he came across with many of these T-shaped megaliths, gigantic size stones. And the more interesting part of these megaliths is that they were placed in circles. And in the middle of every circle, for example, this is one circle here, in the middle of every circle, there would be two more taller megaliths standing in the center and larger and taller. Megaliths would be like from 1.5 meters to 6 meters in height. And the highest one, the highest piece would be weighing like 20 tons. This is such an important thing because for the first time in history, they were finding so many megaliths, so many of them all together in one place, in the same place. And the more interesting part of the story is that they made the dating of these stones, and they found out that they would go back to 10,000 BC. So 10,000 BC and 2000 AD. So these megaliths are 12,000 years old. For example, you can think about the Stonehenge in England. It would go back to 3,500 BC. Same kind of stones placed in circle, but the megaliths are one piece here, and the stones in the Stonehenge consist of a few pieces. And the time difference between the Stonehenge and the Göbekli Tepe is like 6,500 years. So Göbekli Tepe is 6,500 years older than the Stonehenge, for example. And the more mind-boggling part of the story is that archaeologists, as they kept digging the place, they didn't find any traces of living here. This was not a settlement. This was something else. So they didn't find any homes. They didn't find any water. So these, whatever stones they were not homes for people at that time. So this was not a living place. This was not a settlement. This was something else. We're going to talk about it now. The other striking fact that they were able to gather from here was that the period 10,000 BC is actually the beginning of the Neolithic period. Normally, in 10,000 BC, settled life started here and there, but not in Göbekli Tepe. How is that possible? Because archaeologists say that this must be the pre-agriculture period. So the people of Göbekli Tepe were not the settled people. They didn't have agriculture yet because they didn't find any domestic seeds in the area. The domestic seeds that they found would date back to 500 years later, not the beginning of the place. So from this, we understand that it was the so-called primitive hunter-gatherers, nomadic people who must have built the Göbekli Tepe. This is the mind-boggling part of the story. Normally, as I tried to explain a few minutes ago, first you would find the food, the seeds, and then you would start agriculture. And then, because you don't need to run after the food, you would settle down, and then you would
Şerif, yanlışlıkla ben unmute yaptım seni. Tamam. Bir enter vardı da ona bastım.
So the interesting part of the story, as I said, in Göbekli Tepe, it was the hunter-gatherers who must have built these gigantic size buildings and before their settled life, before starting agriculture, and agriculture and settled life must have come afterwards. So everything became upside down in here. This was really a radical discovery. This is the whole plan of Göbekli Tepe. And our mulberry tree, our landmark, is somewhere here. That's the highest peak in the area, as I said. This is the hillside on this side. And Klaus Schmidt started excavations in here. And he found a circular building in here with the T-shaped stones all around in the circle. And he named it as A, building number A, or building A. And then he excavated another circular building here, and he named it as B. And then C, and then the D. C and D are a lot more complicated, a lot larger than the previous two. So actually, we don't know which one was first built. But this one was first excavated, and this was the second one to be excavated, the third and the fourth one. And they excavated another circle here. This is building E, and this is building F. But they did the geo-radar scanning of the whole area, and they discovered that it was not only 6 circular buildings. There were approximately 16 more circular buildings still underground and waiting to be excavated. That's why it is such a large area. And in each circular building, there are about 10, 12 megaliths, the T-shaped stones. And it means there are totally, if you consider all of these 22 circular buildings together with the 2 larger and taller stones in the center of each circular building, it makes about 250 or 300 gigantic megaliths there. And as I said, for the first time in history, so many megaliths were found in one place. And this was the only place in the world so far. How were these primitive, the so-called primitive people of Göbekli Tepe, were able to shape these stones at a time when they didn't have any metals? This is much before the Iron Age. This is much before the Copper Age. You know, they didn't have any metals at that time, 10,000 BC. And when we look at these stones, we see that it is limestone. Comparatively, limestone is a soft stone. And a little farther away from Göbekli Tepe, like 500, 600 meters farther away, they found the quarries. They found the places where they must have taken the stones. So we understand that the stonemasons of those times would use tools made out of stones. To shape limestone, you would need to use harder stones like flint, or in some cases, obsidian. So you would attach a piece of wood to it, and it would be a tool for you, and you would be able to cut the stone with that. So they would, first of all, make the bedrock flat one, and then mark the T-shaped stone on it, and then make a hole all around, fill it up with water, and put pieces of wood here, like poplar tree or something soft, which would absorb the water. So the pieces of wood that they would put here in this hole would absorb the water, and then add more water, and it will swell and swell and swell. And after a certain point, altogether, the pieces of wood all around would crack the stone, the T-shaped stone, from the bedrock. This is how they were able to cut the T-shaped megalith from the bedrock. Then they shaped them. They gave a shape. And then they made some reliefs on them, reliefs of animals. We are going to talk about it as well. And then they must have carried these T-shaped stones from the quarries to the site itself. And how were they able to carry them? It is thought that this was the time in which they didn't have any wheels yet, but they must have used they must have used the branches or bodies of the trees, and they must have rolled these large size megaliths on them. And in order to carry a 20-ton megalith, you would need approximately 300 or 350 people. So obviously, it wouldn't be possible to do it like this. Let's say you are a few hundred people there, and one of you will say, "Come on, guys, you hold it there," and you hold. It doesn't happen so. So from this, archaeologists have been able to gather a very important information. And the information was that these so-called primitive people of Göbekli Tepe must have had division of labor, coordination, and organization. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do this work. How can you make 350 people work at the same time in an organized manner? If you don't have coordination, if you don't have division of labor, if you don't have coordination, you would never be able to do that. So to give orders to some certain people, there must have been some high-ranking people. So people should be scared of them or should feel respect for them so that they would obey. Otherwise, they wouldn't. And these so-called primitive people, they should have needed some large public buildings. These buildings, they are not their homes. They are not small buildings. They are large buildings. And these large buildings definitely should be their public buildings, not for individual use, for everyone. And they must have needed these large buildings, and they must have invested on them, and they knew how to build them. So this is the information which has been gathered from Göbekli Tepe. So in this case, we can say that what makes Göbekli Tepe such an important site is not only its long history going back to 12,000 years back, but it is also the fact that they understood the so-called primitive hunter-gatherers were actually capable of making such monumental public buildings. This is the information that we have been able to gather from here at first sight. Now let's take a look at these circular buildings from a few different angles. For example, this is building A, the first one that Klaus Schmidt started excavating. And these are the two central megaliths, and the other ones surrounding the building are in here. And then let's take a look at B, the two central ones and the surrounding megaliths, making a circular building. C, this one and this one are the two central megaliths, taller than the other ones. And the other T-shaped stones are all still standing, and they were built in the walls. And let's take a look at the last one. This is D. D is the largest one, and the two in the center, and 12 more in the circle around. And these two from circular building D are the heaviest ones. These are each one is 20 tons of weight. So, of course, by all this, Klaus Schmidt was able to promote it to the whole world. And in many international magazines, Göbekli Tepe was featured for many, many times with interesting and very striking titles. The Birth of Religion, the world's first temple, the Garden of Eden. These were the titles given to the place. And Klaus Schmidt didn't have any objection to these kinds of titles because due to these titles, Göbekli Tepe was attracting more attention from the rest of the world, and it was good in a way. And he allowed the magazines to use these kinds of titles with that. And this is the circular building D again. In the old days, we were able to go inside and we would be able to walk in here and there. And we would sometimes be permitted to touch the stones as well, but not anymore. So going inside is not permitted anymore. So we can only make a circle all around these four buildings. That's the place under the awning. But in the Museum of Archaeology, which is maybe the largest museum in Turkey today, it's a brand new museum in the city center of Şanlıurfa. They made a replica of the enclosure D. So they made a replica of this one in the museum. And it has been such a good idea because in the museum, inside the replica, you can walk through here, you can touch the stones, you can look at this size of the stones, and you can have the real sense of the place. As you see, the two central megaliths are fitting in the two carved sockets in the bases. These are like the bases for statues, and the two central megaliths look like statues actually, and they made little holes like sockets, and they put the megaliths in these sockets. That way they are able to stand there, and you can see the size. You see, it is like 3 or 4 times taller than an average person, and you can have an idea about the size of the megaliths. The two central megaliths in the circular building D are the earliest known monumental stones in the whole world. Of course, this is something very important. This is enclosure C. Enclosure C is different than the others because there are 3 layers of walls in this one. See, there is one layer of wall here, a circular wall, and there's another one in here, and there is one more in here. So the smallest circle is this one. There's something like a bench in the inner face of it. You can almost sit on it. That's the way, that's the height. And the 2 central megaliths are here. And then there is a corridor in between the first wall and the second wall. And then there's another corridor between the second wall and the third wall. The very interesting side of the story is that there is no entrance into the inner circle. So there are lots of questions waiting to be answered in Göbekli Tepe. There comes a question here. Were these circular buildings covered with roofs, or were they open air? And the answer is very simple to this, because archaeologists say that these stones, I mean the megaliths, were made with limestone. In comparison to marble or granite, limestone is so soft, and it wouldn't live for hundreds or thousands of years, definitely. I mean, with the sunlight, with snow, with rain, and then the sharp changes in the temperature, with the cracks, and it would dissolve. So from this, archaeologists say that definitely these circular buildings, once upon a time, should have been closed or covered with a roof on top. And furthermore, the 2 central megaliths would be the stands for the roof on top of the building. And this is, for example, the circular building C, a reconstruction drawing of it. There is a corridor going into the place, but see the inner circle, and there is no entrance into the inner circle here. This was the interesting part of the story. We don't know if these 22 circular buildings were built at the same time, or 1 by 1, 2 by 2. We have no idea about it. Maybe they built one, and then when it ran out, or when it was destroyed, or when it was deteriorated, they built another one, maybe another one. We don't know. Here comes an interesting theory from an Israeli archaeologist. This Israeli archaeologist recently published an article in an international magazine, archaeology magazine. And what he did was that he took the middle points of the three circular buildings, B, C, D, and he connected them to each other with a line. So he found a triangle. But the interesting side of the story is that this triangle is more or less an equilateral triangle, which means each side of the triangle is the same, I mean the length. So for three buildings with no equal diameters, they are different sizes, they are not the same diameter. If they were built at different times, to be able to have a triangle like this was not very probable. It would be too hard to have such a perfect triangle if they were built at different times. So from this, it is thought that at least out of 22 circular buildings, these three should have been built at the same time. But still, no evidence, and we don't know. It is just thought so. Another thought-provoking or unbelievable part of the story is that when Klaus Schmidt excavated these circular buildings, he found almost all of these megaliths as still standing pieces. You know, when you look at the ancient cities, 2,000 years old, 1,000 years old, whatever, if a city was destroyed, there are a few reasons for it. It may be an earthquake. It may be some epidemic diseases. It may be some wars. It must be a disaster. It must be a famine or whatever. So what is interesting in Göbekli Tepe, you don't see any destruction here. You see that the megaliths are still standing. They were not fallen off. Yes, some of them fell down, but not majority, no. They were still standing. And also, when you look at the material that the whole area filled, it is not just sand. You know, that normally there are some floods and mud comes from the mountains, and that mud together with the flood covers the whole city, and the city is buried. This cannot be possible here. First of all, there are no very high places around for any possible floods. Number two, in the rubble, they found human-touched material. You know, if it's a flood, it's going to be the soil of the mountain nearby, and it's going to cover the whole area. But when you look at the rubble in here, you see pieces from stone plates, you see tools, you see some bones of animals, bones of people in the rubble. So how is that possible? So by looking at all this, archaeologists now say that Göbekli Tepe buildings must be buried by people, must have been systematically buried by people. So again, we have another question which is really hard to answer. Why would Göbekli Tepe people bury their circular buildings? So archaeologists, again, have their own ideas on this, and they say if this was something sacred for them, they wanted to preserve them, so they didn't want them to be demolished. That's why they systematically buried them. and this way they were able to protect the place. Göbekli Tepe was added to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 2018, which was very good news for us, of course. It well deserves to be in this list, of course. And on the other hand, Turkey declared the year 2019 as the year of Göbekli Tepe. And from 2019 onwards, we have been using Göbekli Tepe as a promotional material in our international events and so on. So actually, and to be honest with you, Göbekli Tepe is becoming so popular, but on the other hand, we don't have enough visitors going to Göbekli Tepe. One reason is that Şanlıurfa is very close to the Syrian border, and when people look at the map of Turkey and when they see the Syrian border, they are hesitant to go there, I mean, especially foreign guests. But on the other hand, as a guide who goes to Göbekli Tepe every week or every 2 weeks and so on, not in the pandemic, of course, I would say I don't see any risk there at all. It is such a pleasant place. The food is superb, and there are so many other things to see there. And it is only 1.5 hour flight from Istanbul, and there are very nice hotels there as well. So why not? I mean, there is no risk. I mean, there is no war in the border area at all. An interesting fact about Göbekli Tepe, more than 100,000 pieces of bones were studied here. And from the cut marks, archaeologists understood that these bones were believed to be bones of butchered animals because the bones had cut marks on them. And 60% of the bones belonged to gazelles, and the other 40% of the bones were boar, sheep, deer, and some birds like vulture, duck, crane, and goose. Another fascinating data that we have here is that when we look at the floors of these circular buildings, we have two different floors. One floor, it is the bedrock, the rock itself. They just made it flat, and then on top of that, they built all these megaliths and so on. The second kind is called as the terrazzo floor. And this is hard to believe. They made a mortar with burnt lime. You know, just like making cement today, they burnt lime. And they burnt they must have burnt abundant amount of lime in order to obtain all of these floors, for example. And they made a special mortar, and together with this mortar, they fixed the stones, almost like a mosaic floor. So in either case, the bedrock itself or the terrazzo floor, in either case, the floors were waterproof. Why do you think these Göbekli Tepe people would need waterproof floors in these circular buildings? Of course, this brings many other questions. First of all, as National Geographic was saying in the cover, the buildings in Göbekli Tepe, were they really temple buildings? Actually, archaeologists do not want to use the word temple so easily. They prefer using a safer definition, because to be able to call a building as a temple, you need a deity there in which you're going to worship. I mean, there are going to be gods and goddesses, and people will go there to worship these gods and goddesses. They haven't found anything like that. That's why it is not so easy to name these buildings as temples. Instead, archaeologists say this must be a gathering place for their rituals, for their ceremonies. And people did not live in Göbekli Tepe. They must have lived outside the place. And at some certain times of the year, they must have come here to have some rituals, to have some festivities, and so on. So rather than the word temple, we prefer using the word a gathering place, most probably for rituals. But what kind of rituals, we don't know. And coming back to the waterproof floor, why would you need waterproof floor in your building? We may think of two possibilities. Sacrifices, so there's going to be blood everywhere, so you don't want a mess everywhere. That's why you need waterproof place. Or for your rituals, when we look at the Bronze Age people in much later times, for example, they pour libations, sacred drinks for their deities and so on. So we might think of these possibilities, but still, this is another question waiting to be answered. But the advanced technique with the terrazzo floors is very, very amusing, I would say. And here's an example for the terrazzo floor from the circular building B. You see, it looks like a mosaic floor in here. And now we shall talk about the motifs and the figures on these stones. This is circular building D, and this is the replica in the museum. And look at the two stones standing in this middle. And these are resembled to human beings. This must be the head, and this is the left arm. This is the elbow here. And the hands are coming close to each other from the two sides in the front. So this is not the face. This is the face here. So this is another human representation. The two in the center would represent the human beings. See, the right arm, the right elbow, and the hands are coming close to each other in the front. And there's a belt here. There is a buckle of the belt in the front. And there is a fox figure right next to the right elbow in here. See, this is the buckle, and the belt continues towards the back from the two sides. There is a fox skin hanging right underneath the buckle. This might have been used for a loincloth, like a dress. And the two hands are coming close to each other just above the buckle. And look at the sophisticated motifs on the belt. Look here. They look like the letter H. There are some curves on the two sides, very sophisticated, but we still don't know what these mean. On the other hand, there are thousands of animal representations, figures on these T-shaped megaliths. And when we look at these animals, we see that they are not mythological animals. They are just simple animals from daily life. You can see like pigs, like fox, like cranes, like a scorpion here, lots of snakes, and sometimes ducks, and sometimes oxen, some reptiles. And you can see the boar here together with the teeth. And there is one stone with a very sophisticated picture on it. Take a look at this. This is a vulture. And there's a scorpion here. and the vulture is holding something like a sphere. Down below here, underneath the scorpion, there is a man with no head. You can identify the arm. The right arm and the left arm was damaged, and the legs are here. And the head of this man might be the sphere in front of the vulture. We don't know. You know, think about the Egyptian hieroglyphics, the picture writing. The Göbekli Tepe people put so many of these figures in here, motifs and animal figures all together. Of course, they are saying something here. Maybe this is an early form of picture writing from 10,000 BC. Maybe it is not the Sumerians who've used the writing for the first time in 4,000 BC. Maybe it was the Göbekli Tepe people. But we are not sure. I mean, this is obviously, there's a message here, but I don't know if we can regard it as a writing. As long as we don't know what it means, as long as we are unable to decipher it, it is hard to tell that this is a writing. What is interesting here is that the Göbekli Tepe people might be worshipping nature like in the shamanistic cultures. This is for sure. And another mind-boggling part of the story in Göbekli Tepe is that, you know, Göbekli Tepe is from the pre-pottery Neolithic period, the early times of the Neolithic period, in which they didn't know how to make pottery. They didn't make any pots. But imagine, these people didn't know how to make pots, but they were very much aware of the art of sculpture, very stylized animal figures in the art that they made. To be able to come to a level to make reliefs of animals, stylized reliefs of animals like this, it is said that from about 1,000 years before, you must be doing these kinds of sculpture from before, at least 1,000 years before. This is really hard to understand. These are the statues of animals excavated in Göbekli Tepe and exhibited in the Museum of Archaeology in Şanlıurfa today. Look at the details in the teeth of this animal, for example. When we look at the figures, I mean the animals and whatever, it is always masculine. But there is one figure in Göbekli Tepe, a carving on a stone, which belongs to a woman rather than a man. You see, there is a woman in this picture. It is generally interpreted to be a woman who is squatting. You can see the hairstyle, you can see the breasts hanging on the two sides, and she's squatting, and she is as if she was delivering a baby. It wouldn't surprise me. This is the only woman figure in Göbekli Tepe. Other than that, no other woman figure. But if we go to Çatalhöyük, which came like a few thousand years after Göbekli Tepe in central Anatolia, we have the mother goddess of Anatolia in Çatalhöyük. It's a small statue made out of clay, and that is the fertility goddess sitting in her throne with her two feline animals on the two sides, a big body, because she is representing fertility, productivity. She must have given birth to many children. And while she's sitting, between her two legs, there is another baby coming out. Just like maybe in this one. So this is in Çatalhöyük. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of my presentation in here. And if I have taken too much time of yours, I apologize. But if you have questions, we can continue with the questions so that we have more time together.
Thank you so much, Sheriff. We listened to you breathless once again. It's incredibly impressive, and thank you for putting us together. So I haven't seen any question on the chat portion, but if I missed any, please, you can unmute yourself. And I think, Selma, you have a question? Okay, so if there is no question, may I have one?
Sure.
You said that all these circular residences, I mean, the circular excavations are not actually residential places. They are not temples, but the gathering places. And there are 30 something, 24, if I 22 of them. So this means that if they are not a residential area, around this area, there must be a settlement. I know that you have been to this area number of times, and even what was Shafak Bey, Shafak Amca, who is the source of this place. So how do you see when you look at this? How large was the city? I think this is amazing. Oops.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Mustafa. And Klaus Schmidt, unfortunately, he passed away some years ago with a sudden heart attack, and I send my tribute to him here. Before excavating Göbekli Tepe, he was excavating another Neolithic site, which was named as Nevali Çöri. Nevali Çöri is under the Atatürk Dam today, so it is gone. They made rescue excavations there, and whatever they were able to excavate from Nevali Çöri, they brought them all to the Museum of Archaeology in Şanlıurfa. So next to the replica of Göbekli Tepe in the museum, it is the real pieces from Nevali Çöri in the museum. And what is interesting is that in Nevali Çöri, there was a settlement, and somewhere near the settlement, there was one of these buildings made with T-shaped megaliths. So people lived there, and they had their whatever ritual building there next to it. So when we look at the Göbekli Tepe site, it is not the same story. Göbekli Tepe is, first of all, much larger. And instead of one enclosure there, like in Nevali Çöri, there are 22 in here. And in the first phase of the archaeological digs, Klaus Schmidt never found water, never found homes, never found evidence of living there. And he said, there's no living here. But later on, there is another archaeologist from Belgium, Mr. Leclerc. He's in charge now, and he came with some new finds. He said, we found a cistern, we found some water channel, we found some hearths, I mean like fireplace, and we found some tools. So there is some living here. But still, I mean, size-wise, what they found with the enclosures, gigantic size, the public buildings, and the evidence of living is so small. Still, we have to say, this must be the gathering place. When we look at the whole area of southeastern part of Anatolia, there are 20 other Neolithic sites. So from an area of approximately 200 kilometers, people living in the area, they must have come here for some certain times of the year. You know, before Göbekli Tepe was excavated, before it was discovered, that mulberry tree on top of the hill, there are a few burials there, mostly from the Ottoman times. We don't know to whom they belong to. But in every year in spring, together with the equinox, people from around would gather there, would come there, and they would have some sacrifices, they would have some rituals there in order to expect for more productive year ahead, for more crops and so on. So even after 12,000 years, the Göbekli Tepe site must have protected its whatever sacredness, I would say. So as a result, I would still say a gathering place for the people from around.
Thank you so much. And I'm also proud to say we reached 97 people from 5 continents, and still we are 86. Thank you for all for their patience. I have seen that there are a number of questions, and Selma and Seyhan are board members. They are texting as well about these questions. Is any of you want to read, or maybe the owner of the questions would like to address by unmuting themselves? Esat, I saw your name.
I know Handan Hanım had just an operation with her vocal cords. So let me just read her question and then
read her lips.
No, I will read the question. She says, considering it is an amazing exploration for human history, do you think it has been promoted enough worldwide? Or did Göbekli Tepe year create the impact? I don't think the Göbekli Tepe year created the impact, but it was a good start. And what is so nice about Göbekli Tepe, you know, it doesn't belong to Şanlıurfa. It doesn't belong to people of there. It doesn't belong to Turkey. It is world heritage. And we have to share this place with the rest of the world in every occasion. And whenever I speak about Göbekli Tepe, it draws so much attention. It is such an important site in human history. That's why I think, especially when the pandemic is over, when the border area gets a little more peaceful, I am sure it will start exploding. Everyone in the world with a little bit of interest in cultural heritage should definitely see Göbekli Tepe at least for once. It's a must. I've been there 100, 200 times. Still, I go there, I enjoy going there, and each time I go there, I have lots of interesting feelings there.
I know that you were there 12,000 years ago when you first started the digging.
There also in 2019.
Yeah. Handan actually has another question regarding the artists, about the sculptures. She's asking, does it suggest that they had artists in charge of these relics?
I think it's a good question. If I understand her correctly, it cannot be the normal people to make these figures or to make these reliefs and so on. Of course, there must be some artists doing that. And sometimes artists would be traveling from one city to another, and they would sell their skills and they would make things for other people in other cities, and they would make their income like that. But still, to be able to come to that level, you need minimum 1,000 years from before.
Yeah. And I must say, I'm really amazed with your presentation. I went there twice, but nothing can be compared to your presentation.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
May I ask?
Sure.
First, thank you very much for the presentation. This is Esat. Secondly, while you were telling during your presentation that they needed almost 250, 300 people to carry the limestones to these buildings to build up. So there must be very close to these places a settlement where the people were coming. Are there any traces about any settlement where people were living?
As far as I know, the nearest settlement is not going to be less than 20, 30, or 40 kilometers. But on the other hand, I am sure there are maybe other settlements which are waiting to be discovered.
Because when we are considering like Hatuşhaş and Yazılıkaya or in Alacahöyük, there were always the settlements very close to the temples or ritual places.
Yes.
So that 20, 30 kilometers away, that is a question mark. I mean, it should be most probably more closer to these places, but I don't know. I mean, this is what I'm thinking.
Yes, maybe the new finds with the new archaeologist, showing the signs of settlement there. I mean, living there. Maybe it was a group of people who were in charge of this place, not the whole city, not the whole village, but people who are in charge of this place. They are the workers. They are the people who took care of this place and so on. They might have lived there. I don't know.
Awesome.
But we know that there is a sign for living now. Not a big settlement, but for a small group of people.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Sheriff. This is Bülent from Northern Ireland.
Hi, Bülent Tepe, I guess, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just I wanted to say that, because of the pandemic, we are all now excited to see Göbekli Tepe, but it is gonna be long time to go and see that. Just my question is, would you ever consider to do virtual visit to Göbekli Tepe, and we can come online and we can see that while you are in there on site?
Yeah, of course, we thought about it many times, but first of all, it's in the middle of nowhere. We don't know how well our telephone connection would be for broadcasting from there, number one. Number two, we are not able to enter into the site.
Nice.
It is a circular place. We can just make a tour around. So when I hold my camera, I cannot show you anything.
Okay.
This way, I can show you in details here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But on the other hand, sometimes the Turkish Ministry of Culture and Tourism has a virtual museum of Göbekli Tepe as well.
Okay.
You can just find it online, and you can just do a 360-degree visit there.
Oh, yes.
It's always available there, as long as there is sunlight.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, başka var mı soru? O zaman toplantıyı Mustafa'cığım kapatalım mı?
Yes, I don't see any question, Madam President. And maybe what we can do is, for the last wish, we have 4 world presidents and plenty of directors here. Maybe we will have the World Congress of SKAL International one day in Göbekli Tepe area.
Allah.
We definitely.
Nice. Oh.
Actually, there is one question of Judith Alvarez.
From Argentina.
Yeah, in June 2021, will it be possible to visit the place?
I was in Göbekli Tepe like 10 days ago. Everything is open. I mean, it is just us who don't want to go there. So the museums are open in Turkey. The flights are running. The hotels are working. So everything is fine. As long as we feel safe, we can go. I don't think there are any issues related to the border area. So the only issue is the COVID issue here. But, the tourism professionals in Turkey have all been vaccinated now. Yes, the cases are very high, but I'm sure they are going to be low in the upcoming weeks. So you can start planning one anytime you like.
Yeah, maybe we can visit
Thank
all
you.
together.
Thank you.
Maybe we all together make one visit there. I mean, as SKAL organization.
Yeah. Why not?
I will join. Thank you.
Sheriff, I'm seeing a comment from past President Karin Coulange, and she says you will need the infrastructure not too far away, hotels, restaurants, etc. Maybe you can say a few words. I don't think we have a major problem with the infrastructure.
There's no problem
we have
with
hotels and everything.
infrastructure.
So, tell us
Şanlıurfa,
about it.
Şanlıurfa is a big city of 1 million people. It is one of the most delicious cuisines in Turkey. And there are lots of hotels like the Hilton Hotel and many others. No problem with that. And the distance from downtown area to Göbekli Tepe is only 25 minutes. So everything is fine, no problem. It is not a desert. It is the city, the whole area, actually, on the other hand, is the place where Prophet Abraham once upon a time lived. I was there 10 days ago with 3 preachers from the US. and they were so excited about seeing the places where Prophet Abraham lived, for example.
So that place was already a very famous place from a
Of course,
touristical
yeah,
and
of
religious
course.
point of view, even before
From-
Göbekli Tepe,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
Sure. Again, thank you very much, Sheriff. You did a great job. I
My
mean,
pleasure.
I don't know how many more times we can listen to this with same attention and same enthusiasm, but you are adding to your speech every time.
Thank you.
I
Yeah,
can see.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, really. Each time we were impressed, stuck on the screen, really. Thank you, Sheriff Bey.
Thank you, Asman. Thank you.
Who will do this call toast before we end? Don't forget. I see Tikin raising his glass already.
Don't worry. We'll
Thank
do.
you.
Who will do it?
Okay, let's do.
Let's do all together.
What president should do it?
Together.
Those who did not get vaccinated yesterday, of course, like our president, Karin, she just got vaccinated, so no alcohol.
Is past president Matanya still in the audience?
I think he's gone.
Because I know that most of the people do not know him because of him being away for a while from school. So it would have been nice to tell a few things about himself if he was here. Well, if he left,
You left, I think.
we can do it the next time.
Left, okay.
So I will, if I may,
Everywhere.
shall I say the SKAL toast?
Yeah.
Okay. To SKAL fellows everywhere.
To fellow colleagues everywhere.
Fellow
We can
colleagues
unmute
everywhere.
everyone, I think.
Happiness.
Happiness.
Good health.
Good health.
Friendship.
Friendship.
Long life.
Long life.
Long life.
SKAL.
Call.
A todos los colegas del mundo.
Todas las colegas del mundo.
Felicidad.
Felicidad.
Salud.
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 Amistad.
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 Larga vida.
Larga vida.
Call.
SKAL.
À tous les scolaires du monde.
Du monde.
Bonheur.
Honneur.
Honneur.
Santé.
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 Amitié.
Amitié.
Longue vie.
Longue vie.
Call.
SKAL.
Turkish. Dünyadaki tüm skol kardeşlerimize
Dünyadaki
bütün
SKAL kardeşlerimize
mutluluk,
mutluluk,
sağlık,
sağlık,
dostluk,
dostluk,
ömürler. Skol.
ömürler olsun.
sol.
Thank you, Sheriff.
My
Really,
pleasure.
I
Thank
presentation. Thank you very much for sharing this special day with us. Thank you.